All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Aubrey Way-Miller, and I am a member of the HEAL Data Stewardship Group. I want to thank you all for joining us today for the 16th installment in our Fresh Fair webinar series. Today's webinar is Increase Your Impact Factor Part 2, Study Level Metadata Submission to the HEAL Data Platform. This webinar will feature a presentation guiding participants in submitting study level metadata to the HEAL platform via the CEDAR form. The presentation will be followed by a live Q&A session. Could we move on to the next slide, please? All right. If at any point you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box and we will bring it up during the Q&A session. Next slide, please. I want to introduce our two speakers today. The first is Sarah Myer, who is a data steward in the data management group at RENCI. Sarah provides subject matter expertise and technical support for the HEAL Data Stewardship Group on data curation, reuse, and harmonization. She has experience in public health program evaluation, human subject translational research, community-based research, data management, HIPAA compliance, and technical training. Our other speaker today is Sara Volk de Garcia. Sarah is a part of the HEAL Data Platform team and a user data services group at the Center for Translational Data Science at the University of Chicago. In this role, she provides user and data support services for assorted Gen 3 platform projects, including the HEAL project. Along with the rest of the platform team, she helps HEAL study investigators register their study, complete study level metadata form, upload variable level metadata, and access and use the HEAL workspace. Sarah's experience in software user support, technical writing, grant-funded programs, and science communication and education, her training in public health and biochemistry, as well as her familiarity with academia, has prepared her to deliver cheerful and competent service to HEAL investigators. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah Myer to begin the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is our second presentation on study level metadata for submitting to the HEAL Data Platform. If you missed the first Fresh Fair webinar on submitting study level metadata, it is available on our webinar page. In our first presentation, the HEAL platform team and stewards described how HEAL investigators register their study on the platform and provide study level metadata that describes their study. In today's presentation, we're going to discuss the value of providing robust study level metadata. We will provide a live demonstration of submitting study level metadata, and we will highlight resources available to you. We will end today's session with a Q&A session. Thank you. Next slide. Study level metadata has a very important role in the HEAL data ecosystem. Next slide. Well-curated metadata are essential tools to organize data and to find connections. Specifically, when you have rich, well-curated metadata, you adopt FAIR principles, you include good management practices for both your metadata and your data, you are able to unlock value by encouraging discovery, persistence, and innovation. These are well-curated metadata is an essential tool to organize data and to find connections between data sets. Well-curated metadata will facilitate more powerful analysis. It allows for secondary analysis without as many limitations, and it increases the ability to reuse data, which can lead to new insights and innovations in research. Next slide, please. Within the HEAL data ecosystem, we have several different types of metadata. There is study level metadata, there is data set level metadata, and there is variable level metadata. Today's presentation will focus on study level metadata. Next slide, please. So study level metadata are descriptions of your study. They are capable of being human and machine readable, and they are potentially findable and usable by other researchers. They may be the only communication between whoever produces the data and anyone else or a machine that interacts with that data. Next slide, please. Therefore, within the HEAL ecosystem, we have created very different and specific categories of HEAL study level metadata. And this allows for us to make it easier for people to find studies that are listed and shared in different community spaces that are used within the HEAL ecosystem. The first category of metadata study level metadata that we use is a descriptive summary of the study. This study level metadata is auto-populated, often from NIH Reporter or clinicaltrials.gov if it's applicable. In addition, the metadata location will pull in other auto-populated data, and it will allow you or the person who completes the CEDAR form space to share websites or URL links that are related to your study. Next slide, please. The second category that we see is focused specifically with research and study characteristics. My fellow presenter, Sara Volk de Garcia, will cover each of these areas in detail as she registers an actual study and its related study level metadata. She will also be going over other resources that are available to help you navigate each of these sections, as some of the titles, including things like human treatment applicability, may apply to studies that do not actually use human subjects in their research. Next slide, please. Our study level metadata for the HEAL data ecosystem is submitted through a CEDAR form. Next slide. And this HEAL CEDAR level SEAL form helps with study level metadata because it helps us to harmonize study level metadata with a universal terminology set. It will also associate your metadata with your registered study, and it allows people to search for studies within very specific characteristics. We created this templated form to guide you to help you enter your study level metadata, and it is searchable, and we'll kind of explain some categories, how and why on the next slide. One of the reasons that we ask that study level metadata is submitted through this CEDAR form is because it helps to harmonize the data. Specifically, investigators can choose from a standardized list of their populations of their study, so that while individual studies may describe the population in many different ways, often we see the terms such as babies and neonates and 2 weeks old and newborn, the study level metadata within the CEDAR form will standardize the terminology, which makes it easier then to filter and to search and to return any study that uses any of those terms in the population. So you'll often see our term is used as infant, newborn, birth to 1 month. Next slide, please. And so for a very specific example, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Sara Volk de Garcia of the platform team, and she will be providing a live demonstration of submitting study level metadata through the CEDAR form.
Super, thanks so much. There we go. Oh, there we go. So yes, I am going to do a live walkthrough for how to complete a CEDAR form. Oh. But before we can submit a CEDAR form, we have to get access to it. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that if you want access to a CEDAR form, you first must register your study on the platform. We've had several other webinars about registration, so I'm not going to do a deep dive into how to register here. I am going to just quickly do an overview of the 3 steps for registering your study. So those 3 steps are: first, that you have to request access to register your study on the platform. Next, while you're waiting for us to grant you access, go ahead and create a CEDAR account and grab your UUID, because you're going to use that CEDAR UUID when you hear from us that we've approved your access. Then you can go ahead and register your study. Whoever is the person who registers the study, they will be the first person to have access to the CEDAR form, or I guess really it is whoever's CEDAR UUID is put in there. So they're going to be the ones to have first crack at the CEDAR form. But don't worry if you have a team you want to have support you, because you can add whoever you want to collaborate on the form. And so they just need to have a CEDAR account. So like I said, I'm going to do a live walkthrough for how to complete this CEDAR form. And so we have a real live HEAL study, reducing opioid mortality in Illinois, the ROMI study. And so this is a randomized controlled trial in a population of soon to be released people who are currently in jail or prison in Illinois. Hold on, let me move my videos. There we go. Currently in jail or prison in Illinois. And the study is investigating whether delivering a unified case management approach and peer recovery coaching could engage and retain people in treatment for opioid use disorder and also reduce overdose and related harms. So that's the study that we're going to complete the CEDAR form for. Now, the study is already registered, so I'm not going to show you how to register it, just the CEDAR form. Before we proceed, though, I really want to thank all the researchers on this project for permission to use their project as an example. And I particularly want to thank Mary, Emmanuel, and Mitch because they helped me walk through the CEDAR form initially to make sure that we had all the details straight. All right, so let's go to our live demo. All right, so when you initially log into CEDAR, you land on the workspace page, which looks like this. It's usually blank. To see the CEDAR form that you want to go to Shared with Me, and then you can hover over the name of the study to see the full study name. So if you have multiple studies or multiple CEDAR forms like I do, it makes it a little easier to find which one you want. So then you can just double click to open. And so now we've opened our CEDAR form. What I like to do when I open my CEDAR form is click all the green section headings to collapse all the sections. I think it's a little easier to navigate that way. And it just makes it a lot easier for me to see what's going on. So now that I've collapsed all the sections, I want to point out a couple things. So first, I want to point out this save button down here. The form does not auto save. So please make sure that you save before you leave for sure. And if you're going to be walking away to go do anything, or if you're, multitasking, just click save every time you sort of leave the tab to go do something else. Because you don't want to lose your data. The other thing I want to point out is we provide you a URL down here for a guidance document. So now, as a general rule, most of the fields in the CEDAR form apply to most of the studies, but you might come across a field and say, well, that doesn't really look like it should apply to my study. Rather than you trying to suss it out all on your own, what you can do is go to the CEDAR guidance document, and I'm going to show you some examples for how to use that in a minute. And you can look and see whether it does apply to your study or not. It's very helpful in that way. And so if you find that the field really doesn't apply, then you just go ahead and skip the question. So for fields that don't apply to you, then you just skip it and leave it blank. All right. So let's get started. Our first section is minimal info. And so these first two fields are auto-populated when you have your form submitted. If you have an alternative study title or an alternative study abstract, you can add them here like we have. And on to the next section. The next section is metadata location. The application ID auto-populates. If you have other websites, or if you have websites that are associated with your study, you can go ahead and put them here so that people can find them and increase visibility of your study. The next section is data availability. And so this section is really about whether you're collecting data and when you expect to start and finish, and if you're going to make it available, and when you expect to start making it available, and when you expect to be done making it available. The last question is asking about whether the study is going to produce shareable products other than data. So this could be things like protocols or slide decks or data dictionaries. And so we will be producing other such things. So we indicated yes. The next section is study translational focus. So we expect many HEAL platform users are going to be looking for studies from a condition or a treatment-focused perspective. They're either going to want to find new information about a human pain or opioid use condition, or they want to find treatment for a human pain or opioid use condition. So when you're answering this question, you need to decide whether your study is investigating a condition or treatment of a condition. In our case, we're studying treatment of a condition, so we're going to select that and click OK. The next question is asking, okay, well, what are the mechanisms your study is using to do this investigation? And we're using mental health and social determinant approaches, although I'm clicking this to show you some other options that are available here. And so I should say for many of the fields, you can actually select multiple items. All right. Our next section is study type. This is very straightforward. This is all just, I mean, really just information about how your study is structured. It's all in the grant proposal. I'm just going to skip ahead because this is all, you'll definitely be able to nail this one. The next section is human treatment applicability. Now, this section is a little bit trickier. So I'm going to encourage you for especially these 3 sections, we are going to use our CEDAR form. So I already have the CEDAR form open. It's at bit.ly/heal-CEDAR. And so I'm going to open up my CEDAR form. And what I want to point out is that if you look over in the left nav panel, the CEDAR form sections are all listed here. And so right now we're looking at the human treatment applicability section. So I'm going to click this. And so it gives us lots of information about this section, and actually it even lists all of the fields in the section. So what I want to point out is that each section page in this CEDAR guidance document will have this extra context section. This is where you really want to be looking. So here we find out that, first of all, this section applies to the study, to our study, even if our study isn't a human subject study. Now we are, but we've heard from a lot of people who aren't human subject studies, gosh, it feels like this shouldn't apply. This guidance document will tell you when these questions will apply, even if you're not a human subject study. Then it also tells us, though, that this section only applies if you are studying treatment of a condition, or if you're investigating treatment of a condition. So that is us. So this section does apply. If, however, we were studying a condition and not treatment of a condition, we would skip this entire section. So that's where this is really useful for us to understand. So now that we have that information, I'm going to go back to my CEDAR form, and I'm going to click, I'm going to look at treatment, investigation, stage, or type. And so there are lots of different options here. We've selected the appropriate ones. And treatment mode, there are several options here. So we've selected harm reduction because that's what our study is looking at. However, there's also preventative and therapeutic treatment approaches as well. And then our treatment novelty is that our treatment is an established treatment, but we're using it in a novel population setting or combination, but there are other options. We are providing this treatment to individuals, and the treatment type is behavioral. Okay, so on to the next section. And the next section is human condition applicability. So this is another section that gets a little tricky. So we're going to go back to our CEDAR guidance document, and we're going to click human condition applicability so we can better understand the section. So first, it tells us, if we look at extra context, that it applies to our study, even if it's not a human subject study. Okay, good to know. And then it says, some fields will only apply to your study if the focus is some sort of pain condition. And so if you aren't studying, if you aren't a pain study, then you're going to skip a couple of these questions. So let's go back to our CEDAR form and see if we can start to answer this section now. So the first question is relevant opioid use and/or pain condition. And so we've selected opioid use and opioid use disorder, non-opioid substance use, and opioid overdose. I do want to click on this and show you that there's a number of options that you could select here. And I want to point out that there's like a whole series of pain options. All right. And then again, we said that we're studying treatment of a condition, but there's many other options for this as well. Now, these next 2 questions, do you see how they begin with pain? These 2 questions are the ones that only apply if your study is a pain study. We are studying, we're not a pain study. So we're going to skip them. Now, these next 3 questions are a little bit tricky. If I click on the dropdown, what you can see is, first of all, this dropdown is like super long, and then you realize that actually that's just page 1 of many. So this dropdown is really difficult to navigate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the CEDAR form, the CEDAR guidance document, and see if that question, see if the entry for that field has more information about how to answer. So if I go, I'm still in human condition applicability. And so now I want to point out actually that for each of these pages, you're going to have like a little blue box that has each of the fields in that section. And so the one that we were just looking at was this guy. And so if you click on it, it actually expands and provides lots of information. So it provides information about the possible answers, and it provides information about how the field will be used, and also like how to select your answer. And so all of these are really helpful for thinking about, for making the best selection for what metadata you should be putting in there so that it best represents your study. So it's found by the people it should be found by. Okay, but we are interested in understanding about the options in this field because there were so many. So if we look here, what we see is that actually the dropdown is from the National Library of Medicine medical subject headings. And what is super handy is that it gives us a link so where we can see the tree view of this vocabulary. I already have that open, so we're going to go here. And so what we find is when we go here, we get this tree, but you can expand any of these topics. And so in thinking about our study, it seems like the condition that would be most relevant would be under here. So psychiatry and psychology, we're going to look under mental disorders. And then if we look down here, we see that there's this substance-related disorders. So I am going to see if I can find that in my CEDAR form. So now if I go back to my CEDAR forms, right, spoiler alert, I did find it, but I'm going to show you how to find it. Rather than trying to navigate to S's where there's like zillions of pages, what you can do is start to type. And as you start to type, it identifies all of the options that have that in there. Now, there's still kind of a lot of substances in here. And so what I'm going to do is add that dash. And now I see that substance-related disorders. So I can click that, and there we go. Now, these three fields all have the same drop-down options. So that medical subject headings or whatever will apply for all three of these. This first question is asking, okay, well, what is the condition that your study is targeting? And then the second question is like, what is the outcome that you're monitoring in your study? And then the third question is asking whether there are other things that you might also be monitoring. And so in this case, we're both treating and monitoring substance-related disorders. But we're not monitoring anything else, so we're leaving this last bit blank. All right, so the next field is human subject applicability. Again, this is kind of a tricky field, so we're going to go to our CEDAR guidance form, and then we're going to click on human subject applicability and check out the extra context. So again, we see that most of these fields apply even if we're not a human subject study. So all your protein studies, you still need to do this. And this next part talks about how to think about the questions in this section. So let me just summarize it. The point of this section is to help users who are looking for studies that have particular focus or application for specific groups of people. So if your study seems to apply to everyone on the list, then it doesn't have special applicability to some of the groups, right? It applies to everyone reasonably equally. If that's the case, don't select all the groups, just leave it blank, right? Because then the answer is no, my study doesn't have special applicability for this question. So that's something that I think can be a little bit confusing for IPIs. And so let's look at that. All right. So in looking at the first field in this section, it's asking about gender identities. And so my study doesn't have any particular enrichment in people with one gender identity over another, and it doesn't have like any sort of recruitment restrictions or recruitment specialization or whatever. So we don't have any special applicability for any of these groups, so we're going to leave it blank. Looking at this next one, we also don't have any special applicability to any specific sexual identity. Ditto for biologic sex, right? We're not like only recruiting women or particularly recruiting women, biological women, I should say. Okay, so moving on. This next question is about specific age or developmental stages. Now, we are specifically selecting and enriching for some of these groups over others. And so one group, or well, really we're selecting for adults. We're not including any children in our study, only adults. And so what we've done is we've selected all of the adult age groups. And if I just want to click on this so I can show you that there's plenty of breakdown for child age groups as well. All right, so the next question is about vulnerable populations. And so it's asking whether we're enriching or targeting any vulnerable populations. And the answer is yes, we are, because we're looking at prisoners. And so just to remind you about other vulnerable populations. Okay. And so then this last question, this is the question that only applies to human subject studies. And I know that because it starts out with human subject studies. The rest of those apply to everybody, whether you're a protein study, mouse study, whatever. This, though, is only human subject studies because it wants to know what's the location of your human subjects. And so it's asking whether, so where are they living or where are they getting care? And so in our case, our subjects are living in Illinois. So on to the last section. The last section is data. And so if we go to our CEDAR form or CEDAR guidance document and click data, what we see is that this section only applies to your study if you said that your study is going to collect or produce data. We've heard questions from some users who say, no, this isn't a study that's going to be producing data at all. If that's the case, the section doesn't apply to you. You can just skip that section. And so there are 10 fields in the section. If it does apply to you, but you're not a human subject study, still answer the first 3 fields. If you are a human subject study, answer all of them. Okay. And so now that we understand that, we're going to go back to our CEDAR form. And our data is quantitative and qualitative. Our sources of data have been identified here. I just want to show you some other options. And we've identified our data type, but there's plenty of other options here. And so for our human subject data, the unit of collection is individual. So we're collecting data from individuals, not from groups. And we expect to have 600 individuals in our study, like that we're collecting data from. But when we do our analysis, we're going to do our analysis in several different ways. So individual, at the individual level, community level, group, cluster, and population level. And we expect all 600 of our individuals to be included in the analysis. When we make our data available, it's asking, will it be individual data that's available or will it be aggregated? And it's actually interesting because there's a number of nuanced options that are available here. And so we selected that we will make individual data available, but in an aggregate form. And then finally, it's asking, this first question about geographic data is asking, what level of detail did you collect your location data? And we collected down to the zip code level. But then it's asking, okay, well, what level of data, what level of location data are you going to be sharing? And that answer is county. We're not going to be as specific when we share. And that's it, guys. We've just completed the CEDAR form for our study. So I'm going to click save, and I'm going to notice that it gives me the save message. And we're going to go back to our slides. So I've shown you the demo. I want to show you, or I want to tell you about some other resources that are available for you as you're looking to do these things. So first, we have platform documentation that you can always access from the platform, or you can access from this bit.ly. The CEDAR documentation, that guidance document that I just was referring to several times, that's at bit.ly/heal-cedar. And then we have a series of videos as well. So if you haven't registered your study yet and you'd like to watch a video about it, we have a video playlist here for how to do study registration. And then we have a video playlist for how to think about completing the CEDAR form It doesn't include this walkthrough, but it does include lots of other tips and tricks and lots of information about why metadata is important. And so that's available here at this bit.ly. And so in summary, we hope that this webinar has shown you that well-curated study level metadata can increase the visibility and the impact of your research. The CEDAR form is how you submit your HEAL study level metadata. And great news, to complete it, you only have to have information from your grant proposal. You don't have to have started collecting data or anything. We have documentation, videos, and other resources available for additional support on the HEAL platform site. But if you just want to talk to a person, we are available. So you can contact us at the HEAL Stewards Connect. You can fill out this form to request assistance, or you can reach out to us by email at heal-support@datacommons.io. And now I'm going to hand it over to Aubrey.
Great, thank you so much. These are just some of the remaining resources. So Sarah's already pointed out some of the more important ones, but do want to point out that we have some other resources available, some links to our websites and some other guidance documents that we have created for y'all. We could go to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. And with that, I just want to give a big thank you to both Sarahs for the wonderful presentation. We will now invite our Q&A guests, Brianna Larrick, Troy Hughes, and Phil Schum to join us, and I'll ask them to turn on their cameras for the Q&A session. So we will now stop screen sharing to begin this portion of the webinar. All right, our first question is your CEDAR template public? That's an open question. Anyone?
Yes, it is. It's viewable by the world.
Awesome.
Great. So
I think we have.
yeah, I'll just add to that. I'll pop the link into the chat. So this opens up to the CEDAR form documentation. So I'll just share my screen quickly to give people a look at that. Here we go. So this is the form that Sarah was showing throughout her presentation. And if we click into any of these sections under the CEDAR form sections here, you see at the top, you can see the full metadata model, either in PDF format or Markdown format. So the full documentation is here, and then in GitHub, you can see the schema as well in these folders.
I would just add one thing too, which is that while you're more than welcome to take that template and share it, do anything you'd like with it, we actually intend on or anticipate making some enhancements to this template going forward. And the procedure you've just witnessed hooks directly into our platform. So please do not enter your study level metadata in a separate copy of that template that you use. Please use the procedure shown today for actually entering your study level metadata. But apart from that, you're welcome to share that template however you'd like.
Can I just
Awesome.
add to that? So sorry. Can I just add to that and say, when I was talking about sharing your CEDAR form, that's different than the sharing that Phil is talking about. So when you share your form with their CEDAR collaborators, then they can be contributing directly to the template that's going to be sent to the platform.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for sharing that resource with everyone. The second question is another question open to the whole group. I understand that CEDAR has an embeddable editor that you can incorporate in a website or a platform. Did your team consider using this rather than going directly to CEDAR? If yes, what helped your team decide not to go that route?
I can answer that briefly. We were aware of that. We worked directly with the CEDAR team in sort of developing and deploying our particular use case. And I think we felt, among other things, that by using the workbench, that would guarantee us the most sort of reliable experience and support if we needed it for users. The HEAL Data platform is built on a system called Jan3. And that system may indeed have additional metadata entry functionality in the future. We have not made any decisions about that yet. And so that's another reason why we wouldn't have been prepared to sort of do that. And then just finally, I'll say the HEAL Data Platform is a FedRAMP system. And as you may know, that also sort of has implications for bringing additional software into the system. So yes, we were aware. It's an excellent question. We felt that for our use case, this would provide users with kind of the most reliable service in the short term. And we may be doing different things in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Phil. Our third question is, if I registered on clinicaltrials.gov, do I still need to submit study level metadata through the CEDAR form? My study is not a clinical trial. Do I still need to complete a study level metadata form in CEDAR? I'm going to direct this one to Brianna.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so 2 questions here. If it is a clinical trial and you've already done your registration with clinicaltrials.gov, do you still need to do this through the CEDAR form? That answer is yes. It's a completely separate system of registering, completing, or submitting metadata. So yeah, even if we definitely want you to complete your CEDAR form, even if you've already done the registration through clinicaltrials.gov. And if you, when you're registering your study on the HEAL Data platform, if you are a clinical trial, you have your clinical trial ID number. If you pop that in during study registration, we will pull some metadata in for you from that. The second part of that was, if I'm not a clinical trial, do I still need to do this, go through this process? That answer is also yes. It applies to all studies, no matter what study type, what data type you're collecting. Definitely want you to submit study level metadata through CEDAR.
Excellent. Thank you. Our fourth question is, do I need to select a data repository before completing the study level metadata form in CEDAR? I'm going to direct it to Sarah Myer to take the first stab at it.
Sure. The answer is no. You can choose your data repository after you complete your CEDAR form at any point during your study. If you do choose this after you complete the study registration, then you can just need to contact the platform team. And there's plenty of places where their contact information is available. Or if you email the HEAL Stewards team, we'll also get you in contact with the team members at the platform that can help you change this.
Thanks, Sarah. Our next question is, our study has a lot of sensitive data. Do we need to complete a CEDAR form for our study level metadata? And I'll direct this to other Sara Volk de Garcia.
Sure. Thanks, Chelsea. So the answer is yes. The good news about our study level metadata, or the study level metadata in general, is that none of it is going to be sensitive or connected to any sort of individual participant. Study level metadata describes the study as a whole. So for example, like our study included 200 male identifying people from Nebraska. We looked at HIV status as it relates to opioid addiction or whatever. It doesn't describe a particular individual or, in any sort of identifiable way. It doesn't say, there was a study participant, XYZ, who's a 29-year-old male identified from Nebraska, who's HIV positive. So even if your study is sensitive data, you'll be able to tackle it in the metadata form.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Our next question is, do we need to wait until after we've started or finished data collection to complete our study level metadata form? And I'll direct this one back over to Brianna.
Okay, thanks, Aubrey. And that answer is no. Sarah mentioned in her portion of the presentation that a lot of the information, and as you will have seen, a lot of the information that we're collecting via CEDAR are things that you can find in your grant proposal. So you don't have to have finished data collection to fill out that form. You don't even have to have started it. At any point, as soon as you're funded, you're able to come on, register your study and submit that study level metadata.
Thank you so much. For our next question, I'm going to pass it over to Troy or Phil to start us off. The question is, we have multiple sites in our study. Does every site have to complete the CEDAR form?
You want to take that, Troy, or?
Sorry, why don't you kick us off, Phil?
Oh, sure. So the answer actually is depends a little bit on what you mean by sites. If these are multiple sites in a multi-site trial, then the chances are probably no. If the metadata are identical across all of them, then only one site would have to submit it. If instead it's something like a clinical trials network, where the individual studies actually differ to some extent, then the answer is perhaps yes. There might be some shared metadata across them, but there probably will be some unique study level metadata. So I think our best advice to you on that is that if you do have some question beyond what I just said, please contact us and we can talk you through. We can accommodate just about any structure of studies, and HEAL includes a lot of them. So just contact us. We'd be glad to figure out together with you what would be most appropriate and what would work for you.
Yep, and I'll just echo what Phil said. Just, you know, if you're have questions at all, even if you're pretty sure you know which direction you want to go, but you want to talk through it, let us know. We love to talk to folks about their specific use cases and try to help tailor your experience with the platform to the best effect for all of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, y'all. The next question is, I am not the PI. Can I complete the study level metadata form in CEDAR? I didn't register the study, but I want to complete the study level metadata form. How can I get access to the CEDAR form? This is an open question.
Sure, I can take this one. So if you aren't the PI, you can register the study and work on the CEDAR form. That's not a problem. If your study has already been registered and it wasn't by you, then you might not have access to the CEDAR form yet. That's okay. If you know who did register it, you can just reach out to them and ask them to share. And if they or you aren't familiar with how to get it shared to you, just reach out to us and we can walk you through it. If you don't know who registered the study, you just know that it's registered, you can reach out to us and we can help you figure out who registered the study, and we can also connect you with access to the CEDAR form. So I guess the answer is, if you know who registered, reach out to them and they can share it with you. And if you don't know who registered, reach out to us and we can help you with that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think the key point is, like you said, Sarah, for the job security, everyone, feel free to reach out to the platform folks. They are there to help you out. All right. And that brings us to our last question. How do I know if my study is registered on the HEAL platform? And I'll direct that, to Brianna.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to tell whether your study has been registered. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. And now I have pulled up the HEAL data platform. It's just healdata.org. That brings you to this site. You can see a lot of information about the HEAL initiative, but what we want to do here is up in the upper right-hand corner, we're going to click on the Discovery tab. So here's where you can view all studies that are accessible via the platform. And you'll see this list here. If you search for your study by the PI name or the study name, you'll find yours. And what you're going to look for is this green linked icon. If your study has a green linked icon right here, that means it's registered. And so you're at that point able to submit that study level metadata. And just to show you what it looks like to see one that is not registered, go here. If you pull up your study and see this not linked here, in that case, you will need to log in to the platform, and you can do that right here in the upper right-hand corner. Once you are logged in, this button, once you click on your study, will change from log in to register this study to just, register this study. So just come to healdata.org, click on the Discovery tab, search for your study by PI name or study name, and then look for that green registered thing. If it's not registered already, you can log in and go ahead and do that. Oh, and I will also, while we're here on the HEAL Data platform, show you one way in which we're leveraging the study level metadata that are submitted by investigators. On the left-hand side, you'll see this filters button right here. If you click to expand this out, you'll see some the things by which you may filter all of these, 1,000+ studies that exist on the platform. And when you start clicking these are actually, oh, there you go. What did okay, I think I have some other filters on right now. But how these filters work is they're pulling information directly from the CEDAR form. So when you submit your study level metadata, some of those fields where what kind of study is this, there's a question that is study type. We're populating these filters from information that you provide to us. So as you come through here, if you search for your study or use these filters to pull up your study, if you don't like how it's, if you click on biophysical and your study doesn't appear, well, perhaps you left the data type question blank in your CEDAR form. So then you can just go over to CEDAR, make sure you've populated that as you'd like it to appear here on the platform. And that's how these filters are populated.
Thanks so much for walking us through that. We actually have a surprise bonus question, which is really exciting. So the bonus question is, how is HEAL getting info about studies that haven't been registered? Who and how adds them to the platform?
I'll take that quickly. So we work in constant sort of cooperation with the HEAL office in the Office of the Director. So the process essentially starts with them identifying for us HEAL-funded studies, and then we harvest information from a database that they maintain. NIH Reporter provides the backbone, clinicaltrials.gov if appropriate, and that's how that comes into the platform. But if you have any questions about a study that you cannot find in the platform and that you believe should be there, please contact us. We would like to know about it and try and resolve it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Phil. All right, that officially wraps up for real this time. So, Sarah, would you mind just pulling up the slides?
Give me a second.
No problem. While Sarah's getting those slides pulled up, I just want to say thank you again to our presenters, Sarah Myer and Sara Volk de Garcia, as well as our Q&A guests, Brianna Larrick, Troy Hughes, and Phil Schum. We're really grateful for your time and your insights today. In addition to the presenters and the panelists, we do want to acknowledge the behind-the-scenes team that always works so hard to bring these webinars to production. And those people are listed here. Next slide, please. And we want to give one last thank you, shout out to the audience for participating in our webinar today. We hope you're leaving with a better understanding of how to submit your study level metadata to the HEAL platform. In addition to a recording of the webinar, we'll also email everyone who has registered for this event a list of resources that will assist you as you participate in the HEAL ecosystem. So the slides will be shared, and a link to our Slack channel and our Connect With Us form are going to be located in the chat. We'll hope you'll reach out to us, the HEAL Stewards, for any questions that you have as you embark on your FAIR journey to maximize the value of HEAL data. And as Sarah said, please feel free to reach out to the platform folks as well. We'll see you at we look forward to seeing you at the next Fresh FAIR webinar on June 15th, which will dive deeper into the topic of data de-identification. And we'd also like to do another quick shout out. We're really excited to promote the first HEAL Connections sharing session on June 8th. You can find the bit.ly to register at the bottom of this slide, and the full event link is located in the chat. With that, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful afternoon.